Всем привет! Сегодня в рамках спецпроекта «Что строят в Ташкенте» расскажу вам про реновацию Центра современного искусства. Это здание было построено в 1912 году, и отсюда, по сути, началась электрификация нашего с вами города. В строении, принадлежавшем бельгийскому анонимному обществу «Ташкентский трамвай», располагалась дизельная электростанция, которая, собственно, и питала этот наш ташкентский электрический трамвай. В апреле 2019 года здесь открылся Центр современного искусства, который до сих пор работает в пилотном режиме. Я его очень сильно люблю и стараюсь не пропускать мероприятия, которые он проводит. Вообще считаю, что это важная культурная часть нашей страны. Больше информации вы можете получить вот по ссылкам в описании. Так вот, Фонд развития культуры и искусств запустил масштабный проект реновации этого самого места. Планируется, что оно станет важной платформой для проведения различных мероприятий, таких как лекции, семинары, выставки, презентации. В общем, всего того, что поможет нам понять современное искусство лучше. Для воплощения этого самого проекта привлекли известнейшее французское архитектурное бюро Studio KO, один из основателей которого Оливье Марти, собственно, и расскажет нам про этот проект и про архитектуру вообще. Подписываемся, пишем комментарии и, конечно же, посещаем Центр. В Узбекистане, скажем, у интеллектуальной элиты есть такое мнение, что есть советская архитектура и есть современная архитектура. То есть считается, что советская архитектура, она более качественная, она более правильная, более интересная. Какое ваше мнение о советской архитектуре? Вот у нас есть там гостиница «Чарсу» была построена, гостиница «Узбекистан», ташкентская телевышка и так далее, и так далее. Что вы думаете в целом о советской архитектуре?
I think that in Uzbekistan there are periods of quality of architecture. You have the old 16th century, 15th century of Timur period, which has an extremely high quality. And then more recently, as in Morocco actually, there's a strong colonial Russian architecture from end of 19th century and early 20th century, which really has qualities, and especially this building here is very detailed, is full of good. Probably the diesel station is the most beautiful example of.
Just this building is not from Soviet; it's earlier than Soviet.
Yeah. I didn't say Soviet; I said Russian.
Okay,
so,
that's fine.
Tsarist, imperial, pre-revolution. Because I don't want just to speak about Soviet, because Soviet is a result of the revolution after. So. Then,
but it's two different types of architecture. Yeah. It's imperial and Soviet.
Yes.
I'm asking about Soviet.
I was just speaking in general.
Okay.
So I'd like to say why Soviet architecture is so interesting. I wanted to relate to where Uzbekistan comes from, because Uzbekistan is a great country of architecture. From Timur, even the Mahalas or the countryside, it's a country of architecture. But when the Soviet came, what they did in the Soviet era is very interesting. Uzbekistan Hotel is great, Chorsu is amazing. The most amazing is Chorsu, actually, the structure. And there was, in some Soviet architects, there was a very interesting understanding of Uzbekistan as in a colonial way, but there was a lot of thinking. Many Soviet architects did pretty good renovations of old buildings. Chorsu is interesting with the motifs, the ceramics motif on the dome. It's a very interesting modernist architecture expressing Uzbekistan in a modernist way. I'd like to say that particularly Chorsu, it's a landmark. I mean, it's a great architecture. Uzbekistan Hotel, I don't know what to think because it looks amazing from far, but when you enter, it's full of crap. But to me, Chorsu is clever, beautiful. And I have to say that as architecture is a reflection of political situation, when the Soviet Empire collapsed and then Uzbekistan became independent, then I think what happened in architecture was more the reflection of feeling free again, feeling independent, and probably hiding Soviet era because of freedom. You wanted to say that we're not Soviet anymore, we're Uzbek. So I think that in a long period of the 80s and the 90s and maybe the 2000s, what happened in architecture was more about hiding Soviet. So there have been building many buildings like the former State Museum that's been covered with bad facade, and this was not Uzbek. Like the facades, they were like cheap metal with big arches, and they mean nothing in plastic. And I think they mean nothing to Uzbek. So now I think it's the time to be mature enough to say, okay, we're part of Timur, of Imperial, of Soviet, we're Uzbek. And we're going to, yes, to say we're Uzbek, and we could do modern architecture by knowing we're Uzbek. So I think probably the new pages is about to be written now, a little bit with us, but with probably Uzbek architects. I hope so.
Подписывайтесь на мой телеграм-канал Altman News для того, чтобы оставаться в курсе новых выпусков. Расскажите про вашу студию немного.
Studio KO is an office that my partner and I, we created more than 20 years ago in Paris. And very quickly at the same time, we made by chance another little one in Morocco, in Marrakеше, exactly, which gave us the opportunity to have quickly many commissions because it was a small market in Marrakеше. Although in Paris you have 3,000 architects, so in Marrakеше there was few people who were given interesting commissions, first contemporary house, a hotel, a restaurant. So, you know, it's like a small place where everything's possible because it's a bit wild. It's like the Far West in a way. We did both at the same time. And today the office is about between 50 and 70 people, depending. And we have a kind of holistic approach because we're trained architects, most of us, but we do master plan, landscape architecture, interiors, decoration, furniture design, until tableware. So we have a very, very wide approach scale-wise because we started our practice through interiors. So very few architects like interiors and they think it's for others. They think like women do interiors and we do architecture. For us it's the same thing. And you're speaking of modernism, like during modernism architects would design with the same attention interiors and exterior. It was the same. If you take a beautiful house from the 40s, the detailing inside is amazing. It's very rich and the materials are amazing. Like if you look at the Mies van der Rohe buildings, everything is perfect outside and inside. Today, architects tend to do shitty interiors with good exterior architecture. It's less often together. And we're really trying to put this back together.
У вас в портфолио указано сотрудничество с самим Фрэнсисом Фордом Копполой. Что это был за проект?
It's funny because Coppola came to us because we designed very iconic interiors in London, a hotel called the Chiltern Firehouse, which became important for many people from the movie industry, music industry, and it became very famous. And Francis knew us through that place, and he came to us one day at the office in Paris, like 10 years ago. We were very few at the office, it was a smaller office, but when he came in, everybody was looking at and taking pictures. It was like God was entering the office. And he was already very old and tired, and he was walking with a stick and but very sweet. And he has an apartment in Paris, so he comes once in a while. And he commissioned us for his a private home in New York, next to his daughter's apartment in the village.
Я видел потрясающий по красоте проект у вас на сайте. Это музей Ив Сен-Лорана. Можете рассказать немного о нем тоже?
The museum is really like it's a gift that was given to us because there was no competition. We used to know through Marrakech Pierre Berger, who used to be Ив Сен-Lorana's partner, life partner.
Why in Marrakech?
Because they've been going there forever. They have a house there and they spend 3 months a year in Marrakech. They have the Jardin Majoret. They have a very long history with Marrakech for 40 years, 45 years. So it's very important for them. We saw Ив Сен-Лорана a few times before he died, but our real contact with Pierre Berger, we were close to him. He was an old man and now he passed away. He was very sweet to us, always very protective, and he would call me the boys, and I think he liked us like a grumpy grandpa, like he wanted to protect us, and he was really hard. He tested us on several projects first, residential, and then one day he took his phone and he said to us, I'm doing a museum and I'd like you to do it. and there was no competition. And in the first place, you know what? He thought that he wanted to choose us because he loved us and because he thought it would be easy. And he said in the first place, I want no star architect, and I wanted to be into the family. And I don't think he had any idea of how strong it would get architecturally. He thought it would be nice, but then gradually, he had never done any modern architecture project ever. He had worked with the greatest decorators or designers of the world like for 50 years, but always classical, retro, never done something like that. And he discovered it, that modernity can be interesting, and he took part into everything. We did workshops, we spent days and days together testing things. We invited him to the prototypes and he tried things, he gave his opinion, and it really kept him alive until the end of his life. And he died when the building was finished, and then he died. It really kept him alive. So it's a very strong legacy, and it's a strong history between an old man and two younger architects, and it's a strong thing. And today, what he left to the city is a real iconic building where there's a new clientele of travelers to Marrakech. It's a huge destination anyway, but many people, when they go to Marrakech, they go to the garden next to it, they go to the museum, they take the selfie in front of the YSL. It becomes a postcard. It's a big thing for Marrakech now. And I think they had 400,000 visitors the first year for a very small museum, so it's big. So it became really an example in the world of museum of crowd and amount of people for a pretty small building.
Да, работа на самом деле фантастическая, я от души это говорю. Какой проект вы считаете самым успешным за все существование студии? Или, может быть, каким вы особенно гордитесь?
The most beautiful project for us is not just the one that look good visually, is the one that meets its audience, the one that starts to mean something for people. So I would quote anything that lives well. In other words, you can design the most beautiful project, make it, fabricate it, and then at the end of the day, no one knows how to live in it, and it's shit, because it's meaningless. So the ones that I would say are my favorite is the one that have an amazing life. The museum found its place in the city and really became the heart of life for so many people, in people's memory, like holiday pictures. So for that, it's a big success because people have emotion to it, they have a memory, and so many people love it. So it's a real reward. On the other side of the spectrum, I would say the Chiltern Friar House in London, it's a very complex decoration project, so it's really the opposite, but it's so popular and it's so strong for everyone. Actually, it's the things that others copy. Like the Chiltern Friar House, every time there's a new restaurant opening in London, it's a copy of it, which I'm fine with, but it means it became a new standard. And everybody's saying, oh, I did it. Okay, so it means that people own it, which is good. And then I was last week in Los Angeles for 3 days, and I stayed in the place we did there 5 years ago, which name is Flamingo, and the client had me stay there, and we built a concrete tower just for a tub to have a bath. Just a tower, fireplace, a bath, and he poured me a bath just for me to check, to test what I designed, and globally, the nature, the birds, the food, I was very proud. And I said, because it was living good, you know, it's not just the design, it's the way it lives.
Расскажите про Центр. Чем вас заинтересовал этот проект в целом? Что вы для себя увидели интересного?
The first thing is when we discovered, I was interested in Central Asia and I was excited to go to Uzbekistan because I had always heard, it was the first time we came here when we were commissioned for CCA. So we were excited to go because Uzbekistan is very popular in France and Europe because it's one of the countries people go to. You know, they don't go to Tajikistan, they go little to Kazakhstan, they go really to Uzbekistan. So we were attracted, excited. And then when we went here, we discovered this room, the diesel station, that has really something beautiful. It's beautiful, it's like a temple, a church, or there's something in the space which you don't see on pictures. And when we discovered the place, we really found it beautiful. And everything is new for us, and there's a real strong appetite. The foundation, which we're collaborating with, they really have a strong will to do things, a strong appetite. Even the crowd in Tashkent, they're not thousands of people, but the ones who are interested into that, they really want it. You know, no one is spoiled. No one has seen everything and they don't care about everything. They're really interested. So when you do something in a context of people who are really expecting it, that's a great expectation. Because there's little and everything you would do would really get the crowd to come in. So it's good to do things for the people who really care, which is the crowd and the foundation. So this is why we accepted it.
Что вы планируете здесь поменять, изменить? Можете вкратце описать концепцию?
I think, first of all, we want to give it love. You know, like it's an old lady, no one ever cared for her, and now you have to make her fresh and say, oh, you're beautiful. And so it's really give her love. So it's just like cleaning, restoring, revealing, removing what's bad, and then transforming it.
To what?
It's a kind of a mini Tate Modern in London, because Tate Modern used to be an industrial building that's been completely transformed. I mean, the industrial use is gone, and now what's inside is exhibitions and art, and there's nothing better than art to bring people together. So it's really a place to share, to be together, to share different civilizations with modernity, because it's contemporary art. So it's like a hub, it's a platform of life and exchanges and creation.
После реконструкции центр будет вмещать в себя выставочное пространство, трансформируемую аудиторию, кинотеатр, книжный магазин, библиотеку, пространство для мастер-классов, кафе-ресторан, архив, раздевалку, открытое пространство и офисное помещение для персонала. Немного ли активности для такого, в принципе, не очень большого места? Вы будете это как-то компоновать или расширять?
First of all, we are doing extensions in the basement. So we're digging the ground just one level. So we're making sure that the additional spaces that will not be visible. So the second building will go a bit down by one level. This will go down. Below us we have the fuel tanks from the diesel station, which needs to be destroyed because they're full of oil and they smell.
Still it's full of oil?
No, but it's full of
It was full of.
It was, so we have to destroy it. So there will be an extension through below. First of all. Second of all, there's a very strong hierarchy between the functions you're speaking about, because a bibliothèque takes 35 square meters. An auditorium takes maybe 120, but most of the functions you were referring to, they're very small. A bookshop is 20 square meters. So many of the functions you're speaking about, it looks huge, but it's not. The only big thing is this room, which is a vast empty space for artists to put things in, and that's it. So all of the functions you're referring to, they're not at the same level. Many of them, they're tiny, and you can put them together in a very short space. What is really big is the exhibition hall, which is where we stand now. So with the hierarchy, yes, you can fit everything in, and it's pretty spacious. It's really about digging in the ground, and when you don't want to add more space in the upper levels, you dig in the ground, and everything you had is hidden. You don't see it. That's why it's mysterious. Like from outside, no one knows. Yes, a bit, but looking at this building, no one knows what's happening, because you're arriving from below. You know, it's like those prisoners when they want to escape from prison. They go into the ground and they go up, and it's like that. It's like escaping a prison to go there, and you exiting on the other side, and you're running below the entrance, underground, to access this building.
Будут ли применяться какие-нибудь действительно новые решения, которые, возможно, вы никогда ранее не применяли в реновации этого места?
Yes, probably there'll be some inclusion programs, and we're going to try, I hope we'll be able to, some interesting environmentally techniques for the energy. So yes, we have the ambition for that. But there's already so much to do. So yes, this is ambition, but I don't know yet. I think the project has a ecological labeling ambition. I don't know which one exactly, but I know they want to go as far as that. Yes. Yeah, it's part of the program.
Расскажите про концепцию арт-резиденций, которые будут здесь. Арт-резиденция в Махалях, Намуна и Хастемам, да.
Yes. So the art residences, it's funny because you were speaking about trends in architecture, the movements, and what's getting new. And what's really funny is that I was really thinking of that, like, some people may think, oh, I'm going to invite a very famous artist from Japan. he's famous, so I need to show him the best of Tashkent. And some people a few years ago might have think he has to be in a clean space, like super clean and modern. But I can tell you that anyone coming from abroad, what they want to feel is the deep Uzbekistan, really. And this is modernity, because this is what it teaches us. So for artist residencies, in the first place, when we were commissioned for here, there was in the program 3 artist residencies in CCA, in this one. And when we started to put together things, probably this answers your previous question, it was a bit too small to put the artist residencies. So probably the reason why we can put everything in is because we put away the artist residencies. In the first place, they wanted us in here to have, I think, 3 artist residencies. We said no, so delete them. And then gradually they started speaking to us that they wanted to buy some mahalas to show how to restore them, to make a case study, an example. And actually, a long time ago in Morocco, we took a farm with a very close friend of ours, a very rustic farm, like it looks like Star Wars in the desert, you know, like mud walls, very thick, like Star Wars. Beautiful, in the middle of nowhere, in the desert by the mountain. And gradually, recently, it became a place we lended to artists 1 month per year. And we understood how interested any artist would be into going into a mud house in the middle of nowhere, any kind of artist. Video, painter, photographer, ceramist, this is really one they want to go there to create. And this is how we said to the foundation, to the people we work with, I think your artist residencies, they have to go in mahalas.
Как-то концептуально они будут похожи друг на друга, именно стилистически?
No, as I was saying earlier on, it's the same coin, but it's 2 sides, pile ou face. But it's the same thing, but it's 2 opposite sides. It's the yin and the yang, it's 2 opposite things. Here is really about bringing it in the future, because we're building new things here. Huh? We have an extension, and you have concrete and brickwork. It's going to be really strong and more modern, and it's an imperial Russian building. Mahalas is traditional Uzbek building, very different. And we're more doing something of a pilot project of pure, faithful restoration. So Mahalas is more rustic, more faithful. We're not pretending to reinvent, except the madrasa, we're building one modern building. But it's much more rustic, traditional, crafted, artisanal, with mud and things. It's very different. It's like the opposite of the same coin. Complementary.
Когда планируется начать и завершить проект? Есть ли какие-то наметки?
I will leave that to the foundation. No, beginning of works has to start quickly. I know that. It's really in the agenda to move fast. For the end of the construction, I can only let the foundation answer to that. I not take the risk. For now, we've been working on this project for a year and a half. So most of the drawings are getting finished. So we're really entering the construction stage. This is the end of our drawings, and now it's about to get started in construction. I just know they want it as fast as possible, but we're saying it has to be good. So it's not just a question of speed, because what we're building now is for generations to come. And in 20 years' time, people will not give a shit about did it take 6 months in extra or less. That's not the point. It's the quality of the object we give to the people.
Строить будут наши строители?
I think most of what will be done will be Uzbek people or Tajik people. I mean, the people from the region, the craftsmen, the one who do the brickwork. So it will be probably a collaboration between West or Russian or German or French skills, expertise and management. But most of the works will be done by local teams, most of it.
Я правильно понимаю, что у каждого города есть свой дизайн-код? Давайте вернемся еще раз к нашей современной архитектуре. Какой, по вашему, дизайн-код у Ташкента все-таки?
Yeah, I would say that Tashkent is a garden city, as I would say, because it's really full of trees and wide avenues. And I think Tashkent probably lost quite a lot in the time.
Yeah.
Maybe because of, I don't know, war or earthquake, I guess. If it was to have a city code again, it would have the color of that brick, of the beige, of the earth, because it used to be that. It's an old city, Tashkent. So maybe it lost its color code, because now every building is white and white, and it's or mirror or glazing. But Tashkent was meant to be an earthy city, like other Uzbek cities, probably, and it lost that.
Еще одна важная, такая достаточно болезненная тема для нашего общества – это как правильно сохранять культурное наследие, культурное архитектурное наследие, потому что ввиду разных причин мы его, как вы упомянули, теряем. Как в других странах сохраняется культурное наследие архитектурное?
That's a difficult question. I think what the foundation is trying to do with Mahalas is interesting because it's really about showing to the world and then back again to Uzbekistan that Mahala is something of great value. So there's sometimes it needs to go outside and go back inside so that people really understand how it's important. I have a feeling that Tashkent population has affection for Mahalas, so it's more convincing the world of money, of business, that they shouldn't be sold or broken down. So it's a global movement which is fighting against the curse of money and business and speculation. So it's a fight. So I think it's each of us should fight against that in everyone's level. The foundation is doing it. I think the people who are living in Mahalas, particularly in Tashkent, which made the choice to live in a traditional house in Mahalas, they really have to be proud of what they're doing. Others who don't live in Mahalas, they have to know how important it is to keep that, because this is where you're from, conceptually. And it shouldn't be erased. It's really, really important. And I think the rest of the heritage, I really hope that gradually there's more learning about how to restore a building. I've seen today many young students and young architects, and they're raising questions to themselves. So probably we could have hope in the next generation who is really wondering how to save that. I think it's a strong thing for the younger generation.
Про студентов. Что нужно сделать, чтобы стать хорошим архитектором?
I remember when a few years ago I met with a landscape architect, a Greek landscape architect, and then we invited on many other projects because it's so special. And when I met him at this dinner in Paris, I asked to him, so how would you describe your practice? And the guy is really calm like that. And he said to me, I do little, but I observe a lot. I mean, he's a landscape architect, so I thought there was something really interesting. So I would not go as far as that into architecture, but what I said to the kids outside today, I said to them, take the time to listen, to observe, because today, because of the social networks, everyone has an opinion on everything. I'm doing that, and everyone wants things to go fast. And I said to them, and you know what, the first question they asked to me is not about design. The first question was about analysis. They said to me, what time do you take to do the analysis? Mm-hmm. Which is amazing that those young kids, they're raising questions about how to analyze. So it means they're wondering about the origins of things rather than the result. So I was really pushing them to take the time to do analysis. I was telling them, ignore internet sometimes and try to find books, because not everything is on the internet. Yes. Internet is just scanning the books, but there are things who are gradually disappearing. And when they disappeared, it's over. So I really said, take the time, observe, listen. And then something else I would say to architects is trust yourself and never imitate. Just try to go deeper inside of you in your memory. This is not fashion. It's not just copying something which is trendy. Just make it real. Trust yourself.
С другой стороны, за все новое, мне кажется, нужно бороться, когда вы даете действительно оригинальную идею, и люди против нее. Нет такого в архитектуре?
First of all, you have to think about what's new and old. Like, to decide to save a building. Is that new? Is that old? It's old because you're saving an old building, but the new thinking, which is now is changing, but it's been 20 years, 30 years, where the new way of thinking was we have to destroy the old because it's crap. So what I'm saying is that what is modern, what is new is never where you imagine. So it's about, I would more say about convincing people not to think all the same way and to be able to be independent and to defend a third way. Because people think this is the way we do, and it's more about telling them maybe we should do it differently. What we mean today new is different than what it was 10 years ago, because now with the climate change, with the civilization movements, people start to understand that being modern and going into the future is not necessarily spaceships, and it's deeper than that. So new can be going backwards into the past, and this is maybe what's new.
Что сейчас вообще в целом происходит в архитектуре? Какие тенденции последний год, я не знаю, последние полгода или там, последние 3 года происходят? Для примера, когда мы делали интервью с турецким архитектором, он сказал, что сейчас больше идет упор, скажем, на бетон, да? На какие-то цементные вещи, на какие-то такие вот каменные материалы.
First, I'm being a bit snobbish, huh? But I like the word movements rather than trends, because trends, it means it's fashionable. Oh, it's a trend. Architecture is going to stay there long before we're all dead. So I'd like not to use the word trend, because then we're speaking of buildings that would last where they are for many generations. But in terms of movement, I will more speak about, probably roughness. The word vernacular, I don't know what's the Russian for vernacular, which means traditional. This word of tradition, about 10 years ago, no one could say that. It meant you were old, you were like crap. Today, there's a long and deeper movement about saying, okay, artisans, crafts and craftsmanship is cool. So there's a deep return.
Все крутится вокруг возвращается.
Always. Anyway, but probably because of the climate change, because of the dangers of industrialization and globalization. So there's really something about, okay, where do we come from? And maybe this is what we should protect. So, and this is into architecture very much. Actually, this is what we've been doing for 25 years, for 20 years. And when we started, I mean, we had projects, we were successful, but we were very discreet. And it was the moment of architects, of Zaha Hadid, then it was like architects. It was the beginning of computer drawing, so everything was shaped like a big peanut and like that. It was the beginning of that, which we hated. We've always hated that. And then what we're doing, we were like breaking stones, making a mud wall, rammed earth, using techniques from the countryside, and starting gradually. And today, everybody's doing that. And we've been doing this for 20 years. We're not the only ones. There have been many others in Egypt, in Mexico. Luis Barragan in Mexico, the great Mexican architect, he's a link between the past and the future. And this is always the way we've seen ourselves. And today, I can say it became trendy to be like that.
Вы много путешествуете, наверняка замечаете, как изменяются города. Есть ли какие-то совершенно новые правила роста городов, скажем так, изменений?
That's a difficult question to answer, because many cities change in a bad way. Many cities become too big. It depends on the country or the continent where you travel to. If you travel to Africa, cities become, or to India or to South countries, poorer. Many cities become a nightmare and are impossible to live in. Water is starting to lack, no more water, too much population, and so
Cars, traffic.
Cars, pollution. So there's more and more contrast between cities. There are some really cities who are really growing so fast. I've seen that in India, I've seen that in Western Africa, and they're taking over and they're destroying nature, and they're impossible to have movements in. Even some American cities can be chaotic. Even Los Angeles is kind of a chaos because there's little public transport. It's hard to say. I think European cities, I would think that today is a moment of extremes. It's a difficult moment for all of us, the world in general. So everybody's getting extreme. The European cities, they are closing the city to cars, and it's like they're saying, no, you're not allowed. So you have, the other day, I live in very central Paris, and I had a friend visiting. She was pregnant, she was that big, and she was forbidden to finish by car, being pregnant, by a stupid guy just because it was the day of no car. And she said, but I'm going to give birth in a week. Can you just have me walk the last 5 minutes? And that was a no. Come on. So Europe is getting very radical into no car, ecology, and it makes impossible city to live in. African cities or Indian cities are getting impossible to live in because of too many cars and too much pollution. New cities such as, Shanghai, or I know Dubai is getting too big and so everything is extreme. And I think it's a moment we're going through. So I would see no other trend than just chaos into being extreme. That's the trend probably. But I'm sure something good will be out of it at the end of the day.
В целом про арт-локации назовите 3 ключевых пункта, которым должны иметь арт-локации современные.
It's a difficult question to answer because there's no one recipe to make, a good recipe to make a good art project. No, it's not written in any book. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, but what I mean is what makes a good art project is maybe more good connection between the destination of the project, like the objective. Is it permanent collection? Is it a center for art? So it means the team we work for, I would say in our case the foundation, and the building and the way you built it. Meaning what really makes a good art project is when the two really go together. In other words, you could do the best project ever, but if it is not matching any expectation, it's going to look bad. It's more the connection between the reason why we're doing it, the destination, and the building itself. Then it could be anything. It could be small, could be big, could be vast, could be spacious, tiny. That's not the point. It's more the real connection. And the most famous art projects in the world, they're really connected to what they were destined for. Like anything, like even the renovation of the Louvre in Paris and the new addition of the pyramid by American architect I.M. Pei was very thoughtful because it was for collections, for certain use, and it's going to last like a century because it really met its public and its function. So it's more about intelligence, and then many examples speak about industrial reconversion into art projects. Like you have the Tate Modern in London, which is a very good example, and it's very beautiful. Especially the first part, the second one not so good, but the first one is this huge turbine hall, beautiful, that became a very interesting art project. So this was very designed. You have as well a foundation close to New York called the Dia Beacon, which is a former factory, beautiful factory. On the contrary to London, they didn't do much. They just kept the factory, put glass, I guess air conditioning. And it's very simple, and they have the biggest collection of Donald Judd and Richard Serra. And this is another beautiful example, Dia Beacon. You have another place in Bordeaux in France called the CAPC, which was a major refurbishing of old wine warehouses like this, big building, brickwork, and they kept everything beautiful. They did beautiful restoration of bricks. And in the middle, you had the most spectacular exhibition of any artist, a bit like here. There are hundreds of nice examples of industrial I think industrial language fits art so well because it's space, big spaces, it's utilitarian, it's simple, it's flexible. So you could have anything art-wise in a former factory. It's a good story together, industrial and art.
Вы сказали, что вы разрабатывали проект 1,5 года. Чем вас удивило это здание? Что необычного в этом здании вам показалось? Изучали ли вы историю его?
Well, first of all, when we know the history, we have very little, because between Russian Revolution, then war, then earthquake, then Uzbekistan independence, there's been so much going on that there's nothing left. There's very little document, there's very little photography, so we know little. We have 3 pictures, we have 2 drawings of the architect, we have a few books that's been shown to us that was saying, so it's the knowledge we have of here is very little. We just know it was the power plant, so there was never any trams here, never any machines. It was what I think was producing electricity with the fuel. So I guess there was a big machine which was making electricity out of the fuel in the tanks. That's it. So what we know of this place is just that we have an emotion of proportion, like I think any of us would have while entering this space. It's beautiful. It's emotion. I don't know, the proportion, the space, you feel good in here. I mean, it smells like shit and it's dirty, but you feel good. So it's more about emotion than rationale. The surprise is that from outside it looks something, and from inside it's much bigger than what it feels from outside. Double bigger, because the scale is different. And
Расскажите про работу с фондом. Почему выбрали вас, как вы думаете?
I had the feeling, and it happens more and more often, that the foundation, in addition to the big choice of a big name for the State Museum and a big building because it's massive, they wanted the second art project to happen in Tashkent to be more intimate, and because the scale was much smaller, they really were keen on finding something more intimate as a practice, and maybe more refined. And because we had this experience of the Museum Ив Sен-Lorana, which is a great public success. It's not just a beautiful building. Of course, we won several architectural prizes and so on. But there's an amazing feedback from the public on this museum. And the scale of the museum in Marrakech is pretty small. So I think it was a connoisseur choice, like people who know, and it's always word of mouth. You have other people from art who know us, they discovered from the museum in Marrakech. It's a combination of things, which is just a choice. And it happens more and more because we're getting more famous. But it's always good to be chosen in a hidden way, because yeah, I like it better that way. The fact that we have the strong practice and expertise in Morocco was important for them because of the roughness and the material, but also I think probably because of having a lot of experience in a Muslim country in terms of I mean, it's very different countries, huh? But there was, yeah, I think Morocco counted quite much on the foundation choosing us. Yeah.
Насколько комфортно работать с фондом?
It's very family-like because it's a small team managed by women, which is good. We had the same experience in Russia, actually. It's a place where women, they hold it, huh? And it's always good to have a team of women. It's not just women, there are men, but the boss of foundation is a woman, number 2 is a woman. So there's a lot of softness, of attention, of delicacy, but it's really, there's a lot of pressure as well. But we put the pressure on ourselves immediately. So we have a very high level of standard and they appreciate. So they're supportive, they're sweet, they try to understand. So it's a very good collaboration with the foundation.
Почему так долго разрабатывался проект, или это нормальный срок?
When we have clients coming to us and say, okay, you have to do everything in 8 months, you know you're going to be bad project. Either they understand that gradually you have to give more, either you don't do it. Because it's really the question of time. Huh? People used to take much more time before to do good things, and we still wonder today, but why was it better before? Because you took time. Not crazy time, but the good amount of time. What the foundation is doing, it's very brave and courageous. It's a resistance against the movement of the world, which is just about power and influence and making war and separating each other from each other. And what they're trying to do is very courageous because they want to resist and to show that Uzbekistan is a tolerant country, is a country full of enlightenment. And then on the other hand, they're clever enough not to imagine that they should bring the West to Uzbekistan. They're really doing it for the Uzbek people. And every time we make a choice, it's never, oh, it's going to be cool in London, in Paris, let's do the same. They always try to understand who's the crowd. And they're really, every time I say it, and at each level, the foundation, so it's not just about being modern or being emerging, it's also about being Uzbek. Those two movements, so I think it's very courageous and clever. And it takes a lot of energy because there's a lot of inertia, like a lot of slowness, and it takes a lot of energy to move things in here. Everyone is very courageous. And I think that at the end of the day, when this is open, everybody will be happy, even the ones who didn't believe in it in the first place, because it will be a place open to everyone. So you have to convince all the resistances to convince it should be done, and I think it's very good the two projects happen at the same time because the State Museum is big, it's for permanent collections, it's easier to understand because it's a big object. This is more underground in a way, and the two will complement each other's.